All right, folks, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this cool Urei Model 525 vintage electronic crossover used to do electronic crossover for multi-way speaker systems, typically in a professional environment, but also can be done for consumer speakers for high-end speaker systems. But basically, electronic crossovers will split the signal up, to, low frequencies, mid frequencies, and high frequencies so that you can run those into separate amplifiers and in conjunction run that into your low driver woofers, subwoofers, mid-range, or tweeters. And that's essentially how electronic crossovers work. They would replace the passive crossover in your speaker system and replace that with an electronic crossover and 2 or 3 different amplifiers to then amplify discrete signals for your individual drivers. I know it's a bit of a long-winded definition, but that's what they do. But that's not what you're here for. I think most of you looking at this probably know all that already and are probably more intrigued by this vintage Model 525 electronic crossover. I've got the top off, and just so you can see how it's built, it's all discrete. It uses it's a stereo 3-way, mono 5-way, if you configure it that way. Uses output transformers for the balance coupling on the outputs, which is pretty darn unique, and they sort of impose their own sound and is probably why this crossover is so sought after. But not only that, it's just kind of super cool. I'll go through quickly what the operation is. Over here you have a switch that sets you for stereo 2-way, and you can see the corresponding lights show you which knobs are active: low, high for left channel, low, high for right channel, and the crossover point for left channel, crossover point for right channel. If you go to 3-way, you have low, mid, high, low, mid, high for the stereo 2 channels, and then you have the crossover point for low to mid, and then the crossover point for mid to high on the 2 stereo channels. And of course, if you go to 4-way or 5-way, it becomes a mono system, and I think it's fairly self-explanatory how that works. Each output has a volume control, and if you pull it, it's a mute. So you pull it out and it mutes the signal, so that's kind of convenient. Otherwise, you have your low, mid, high level control corresponding to the outputs. What makes this thing kind of unique and cool is that it has a test tone and a frequency counter, so you can precisely set the crossover frequency. So if you are setting the low to mid crossover frequency and you push this in, turns on a test tone. You can hear that through my little speaker up there, and then it uses a frequency counter to tell you what that crossover frequency is. So what it's doing is it's applying positive feedback into the filtration system so that you can precisely set that filter by turning it into an oscillator, and they're using the frequency counter. So you can see I can adjust that. So I'll set it for 90. There we go. And then if I go and do this on the other side, it does the same thing. So this would be the right channel. And then you push it in, and this would be the mid crossover. So I've got this mid to high crossover, so I've got this set at about 330, or 3300, excuse me. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And there you go. So that's kind of a cool little feature. Of course, if you set it up as a 2-way or 4-way or 5-way, you know, by extension, I think it's fairly self-evident how that frequency counter and oscillator works to have you precisely set the crossover frequencies for your system. Of course, you want to be careful when you do that, because if you're running this into a large PA system, you know, those pure tones could blow things up. So you want to turn the level down before you would turn on those test tones. Other than that, you know, it's a crossover, and I can show you, I'll play some tunes here. Let's see, I am hooked up to the mid-range channel, I think. So there's muting the mid-ranges. I'll flip it over to the treble channel. Treble channels. All right, so that is the treble. I can mute those, turn them on, set the level. And of course, I can bring it over to the bass channel. You won't hear much out of these little speakers, but give you an idea. And that's the bass channel. Muting the levels. Anyway, so that's how that works. For the low to mid, you have a ×1 and a ×10 switch, so you can, you know, obviously get a fairly wide range on each of those crossover settings for this. Probably the last noteworthy thing that's kind of cool is the whole thing is built with socketed op-amp ICs. Right now it's loaded with TI TLO 84 quad op-amps all around for all of the signal processing. Of course, you could update that or upgrade that to TLO 74s and a variety of other quad op-amps, more modern quad op-amps that have lower noise and things like that, if you so desired. So this is just, yeah, this is a really cool old vintage crossover, and I can see why people dig them so much. But that is my demo.